The story of Siam Lee is one that haunts the city of Durban to this day. It is a tale of lust, greed, and betrayal that ultimately led to the brutal death of a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. The details of the case are murky, the evidence scarce, and the truth elusive, but the name of the man accused of her kidnapping, rape, and murder is one that still sends shivers down the spines of those who knew him. Philani Tuli, a dapper and smart businessman, seemed to have it all until his arrest brought his dark secrets to light. Was he really the monster the media made him out to be, or was he a scapegoat for a much more sinister force at play? Tuli's eventual death has left justice for the burning and bludgeoning of Siam Lee unfulfilled, and the questions surrounding her death are unanswered. But the truth always has a way of coming to light, and as the whispers of conspiracy and cover-ups grow louder, the case of Siam Lee may still have a few surprises in store. In a small town in KwaZulu-Natal, the quiet hum of everyday life was shattered by a disappearance that sent shockwaves through the community. Siam Lee, a 20-year-old woman, went missing on January 4th, leaving her loved ones and friends frantically searching for any sign of her. As the days turned into weeks, hope dwindled and the search parties grew smaller. But just when all seemed lost, a gruesome discovery was made that sent chills down the spines of everyone involved in the case. Siam Lee's badly burnt body was found in a sugarcane field in New Hanover by a farmer who was on a fishing trip with his grandson. The farmer, who wished to remain anonymous, was struggling to come to terms with what he saw. The ground where she was found showed marks from where her body had been pulled, and 2 stalks of sugarcane had been crushed under her weight. A farmer who found her reported that there was a strong smell of petrol, which he believed had been used to set her on fire. If it were not for the light rain in the midst of the night that her body was placed into the sugarcane, the farmer's entire field would most likely have burnt. The farmer was disturbed by the sight of burnt sugarcane in the area, and upon closer inspection, he discovered the woman's remains. He had seen many terrible things during his time in the military, but this incident was particularly shocking to him. The police found clues that suggested a heinous crime had taken place at the scene, to no one's dismay. As police officers scoured the scene, they found evidence that pointed to a brutal crime. Siam Lee had been forcefully taken from her home, driven to a sugarcane field, and set alight. The details of what happened in between were not yet clear, but the horror of the crime was undeniable. As the investigation deepened, the community was left reeling. Who would have done such a thing to an innocent young woman? It was most evidently not a random act of violence. The investigation into the death of Siam Lee was one of the most high-profile cases in Durban in recent years. Police worked absolutely effortlessly to stack evidence and speak to the witnesses, in a great effort to bring justice for the young woman's family and loved ones. The search for Lee began in January 2018, after she was reported missing by her family. Police combed the area, interviewing anyone who may have had contact with her in the days leading up to her disappearance. 2 days after she went missing, her scorched remains were found in the depths of a vast sugarcane field, by its keeper as well as his grandson. The investigation quickly focused on Philani Tuli, who was believed to be Lee's spurned lover. According to Lee's mother, Siam had told her that she never wanted to see that man again. After a date with Tuli, police were able to track down Tuli's address, and he was arrested in connection with Lee's murder a few weeks later. The state's charge sheet portrayed Tuli as a violent and sexually aggressive man with a history of mistreating women. The evidence presented in court suggested that Tuli had a pattern of luring women into relationships before becoming abusive and controlling. 2 other women, including a former lover, came forward with allegations of abuse against Tuli. Private investigator Brad Nathanson was involved in the case from the beginning. In January last year, Nathanson and the police questioned Tuli about the crime. Tuli admitted to raping and killing Lee, but his motive was bizarre. Nathanson believes that Tuli had AIDS and wanted to spread the disease. He claimed that Lee had promised to pay back 50,000 rupees that he had lent her, but she did not. He decided to abduct her, hoping that someone else would come up with the money. Tuli took Lee to his home in Asage, where he repeatedly raped her. She refused to stay silent and threatened to go to the police. Tuli then tried to strangle her, but failed. He then fetched a hammer from the garage, covered her head with a blanket, and hit her repeatedly. He claimed that he did it out of mercy, to put her out of her suffering from the spasms that her legs had gone into during the attack. Nathanson found Tuli's account of the crime chilling because he told the story in a matter-of-fact way, without showing any emotion or remorse. After killing Lee, Tuli went to a garage in Shongweni, to buy 25 liters of petrol. He intended to dispose of her body but found that far too many people were around. He then went to New Hanover and dumped her corpse in a sugarcane field. A week later, a farmer found her body while taking his grandson fishing. Nathanson does not know where Lee died, but he believes that it was either at Thule's home, Cato Ridge, or New Hanover. Nathanson worked hard to catch Thule, but the case was complicated by several factors. For one, Thule had AIDS, and he wanted to spread the disease. Nathanson believes that Thule deliberately infected many people by having unprotected sex with them. For another, Thule was involved in other crimes, such as fraud, which made him rather difficult to catch. Nathanson received a flood of engagement from people who had been extorted by Thule's offers to pile money into fictitious companies and wanted their money back. Nathanson and his team eventually called Thule, but his defense attorney claimed that Nathanson, alongside his assistant, Shane Britz, executed an illegitimate arrest. Nathanson insisted that the police had told him to grab him and that he and Britz had acted on their orders. Thule died before he could stand trial, but Nathanson remains haunted by the case. He never met Lee, but he cared about her deeply and wanted to bring her killer to justice. The sudden death of Philani Thule, the prime suspect in the brutal murder of Durban escort Siam Lee, has cast a shadow of uncertainty over the long-awaited trial. Thule, a wealthy businessman, was accused of kidnapping and murdering the 20-year-old woman. His former lover at that. With Thule's death from cancer on Friday morning, justice for Lee's heinous death remains unfulfilled, leaving a painfully large plethora of unanswered questions. During his last court appearance in May 2021, Thule was a shadow of his former self. He hobbled out of the Durban courthouse on crutches, and his confident demeanor had been replaced with one of frailty. Lee was abducted from a Durban North brothel after a date with Thule, during which she told her mother that she never wanted to see that man again. Thule's name was withheld until he tendered a plea, and he faced several charges relating to the Lee case, as well as his alleged interactions with 2 other women. Since his arrest, Thule's business dealings, including his involvement in the production of biofuel and petroleum logistics, had become under scrutiny. Despite the charges against him, Thule's death means that justice for Lee's brutal death may never be served. Lee's mother, Carmen, has not yet commented on Thule's death, and her close friend Sue Foster expressed shock and disappointment, as any decent human being would, saying that a monster like him got away with the charges by dying, which happens far more often than not. Nathanson, the private investigator, said that Thule got what he deserved. He had made a promise to himself not to shave until an arrest was made in the case, and after 2 weeks, an arrest was made, allowing him to shave his beard with a blade. While Thule's death means he will never be able to hurt another woman, it also raises questions about whether justice has truly been served. Foster just wanted a trial for her Siam, and many others may feel the same. The state's charge sheet painted a picture of a man whose levels of physical violence toward women were unprecedented and quite frankly disgusting. But now, there may be no opportunity to prove it in court. The death of Philani Thule has left many questions unanswered in the case of Siam Lee's murder. It's possible that Thule became enraged after Lee rejected him and kidnapped her in a fit of anger. From there, he may have sexually assaulted and killed her before disposing of her body in a sugarcane field. Some have questioned whether Thule was truly capable of such brutality. Before his arrest, he was described as a dapper and smart businessman who appeared confident despite the gravity of the charges. This suggests he may have been skilled at hiding his true nature from those around him. Additionally, Thule's business dealings came under the spotlight during his application for bail following his arrest. The court heard that he had a long list of registered companies, most of which had fallen dormant. The state also tried to introduce evidence that he had been involved in a fraud scam. These details could hint at a darker side to Thule's life and personality, one that he may have kept hidden from even those closest to him. It's possible that he had a history of violence towards women, and the murder of Siam Lee was simply the most extreme example of this. All that's left now is the memory of Siam Lee, a young woman whose life was tragically cut short, and the hope that justice will eventually be served lives on.